Then I broke down kind of the 3 CRAs for you and where their budgets are at and kind of the priorities for fiscal year 24. We are in not quite the middle of 24 yet, believe it or not. We're in almost the end of the second quarter. Every fiscal year in the state of Florida for municipal corporations is the legal name for a city. So we'll say municipal corporations a couple times tonight. Political subdivision is the legal name for a county. So you'll hear that reference a couple of times. So if you're a city or a county, you have the same fiscal year by state statutes, which is October 1 through September 30. So everything we do operates on that year. Always, we get the last quarter of the calendar year. October, November, December is the first quarter of the fiscal year, and then the preceding year, January through September, is where we dub it from. So obviously we're in February of 24, so it's fiscal year 24. Now when we get to the summer, we'll be talking about fiscal year 25, which starts in October. So you probably, your biggest participation will be during the budget timeframes. At your request or whenever we can meet. Typically the CRAs only meet when we have business to discuss. And typically that's when it comes to the budget and preparations for what projects we want to do and so on and so forth. And so you'll get a feel for that as we go through the presentation. So first, let's start out with what is a CRA? And so this is the big, long definition, and it's not too long, but a CRA, a community redevelopment agency, is a special district managed by a selected board that oversees improvements to a defined area by the use of both political subdivisions taxes as well as a municipal corporation's taxes. So what happens under CRA law is we create revenue that's derived from property taxes, and that makes up your budget, or the CRA's budget. I'll get into more of that in a little bit. So once we have this money, this tax money, where it's coming from, and that's kind of why it's there's always CRAs are typically can be defined as a two-edged sword. We'll get into that in a little bit. Typically, political subdivisions, they're unpopular with the county because the county has to give up what we call the incremental revenue. We'll talk about that. And they have to give that to the municipal corporation, and then the municipal corporation manages the blighted area. So what is the purpose? So we've got a body that's supposed to develop plans to do certain things in a defined area. It has many purposes, but these 10 are the most used and the most common in a CRA. Number 1, remove slum and blight. Number 2, slum and blight, and that's on top for a reason, because slum and blight is the main purpose of a CRA, and we're going to define slum and blight here in a little bit. They are created to create clean and safe places, to prevent crime, to encourage economic development, to build or enhance affordable housing, to fund streetscapes or capital improvements, preserve historic buildings or resources, retain and recruit business, enhance parks and recreation, and increase the tax base. And number 10 is really the primary reason of kind of some of the philosophies of taking that political subdivision money, because it's seen as if you can create and remove these issues from a targeted area, kind of the rising tide brings up all ships, right? Therefore, if you can remove blight, you increase tax base, not just for the city, but all the taxing districts, school boards, county, hospital, all that list. So when you get your crazy tax bill and there's like 14 districts in there, by removing slum and blight and making improvements, that is seen as it helps everybody increase property values, increases commerce, removes slum and blight, and makes the world a better place to live, right? So that's what we do. So how do we create a CRA? There's all sorts of rules promulgated by the CRA. And actually, 1969 was a very important year for the state of Florida, because as we go back and we do things in the state, in 1969, the state did a humongous, comprehensive reevaluation of statutes and kind of redefined everything. So the Redevelopment Act of 1969 was a big landmark, accomplishment. So CRAs are actually authorized in state statutes. So it's Chapter 163, Part 3, and that was part of the whole redevelopment of the state and our statutes, which occurred pursuant to the Redevelopment Act of 1969. Not many cities used CRAs really until the 1980s. Currently, there's over 200 CRAs throughout the state of Florida. And before I jump down to the points, there's many other rules that have been added and modified to CRAs, even since the city of Leesburg's creation of our 3R CRAs. And that's kind of a point of contention, is there's many laws that govern CRAs for various reasons. In all honesty, in my humble opinion, those laws were created because of misuse of CRAs. Municipal corporations taking advantage of tax issues, different ways to create the CRAs around their districts. And every year, the state legislature does something to modify CRAs. I'm not going to get into all those details, but CRAs are complex laws, and we're staying super high level here. And basically what we need to know is they're created by 163. They have a specific purpose to remove blight. And they use two major tools that we're going to talk about, which is it's currently the only use of what we call tax increment districts. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And CRAs are created for the purpose to remove slum and blight. And the state does not have CRAs. The state regulates them through the promulgation of state laws, and then the counties and the cities kind of work together to manage and operate CRAs. So to create a CRA, there has to be a slum and blight area. You can't take, say, the most prosperous area of your community and call that a CRA. It has to have the existence of slum and blight. So the statute 163 defines slum and blight. And these 6 points are the core of slum and blight. So it has to constitute a serious growing menace injurious to the public health, safety, and welfare of residents. There has to be the spread of disease and crime. Mind you, these words are right. Some of these disease and crime, right? The legal words, and so they get a little kind of odd on occasion. It has to constitute an economic social liability, and the areas have to have a decreasing tax base and value, or stagnant is kind of indicates slum and blight. The area has to impair sound growth. So if you have one portion of the community that's rapidly growing, but another is not, the not part would meet the definition of slum and blight. It has to retard the provisions of decent housing, and it has to aggravate traffic problems and create traffic hazards. Those are the basic tenets. And if you go and you move into a CRA and you create a CRA and it's a contentious issue, maybe you have some people who want to create the CRA, maybe you have some people don't, then these definitions really get thought about and really get picked on as, well, is it really creating this issue? Is it really creating that? Is that the crux, or is that the meaning of the statute, John?
How does it have to address every one of those, or at least some of them?
It needs to address most of them. Okay. And therein lies it needs to meet some standard of the definition of slum and blight. So all those things constitute it. I think if you're tactical and you only pick out traffic, like this is a traffic area, But everywhere, but even in that traffic area, in a small area around that traffic area, if you still see growth and you still see these things, no, that's not going to be slum and blight. So the more of these things you can tick off, the better off you are defending the definition of slum and blight. So like, for example, if we look at the intersection, just jumps to mind, intersection of 44 and 441, that's slum and blight because there's accidents that happen there all the time. That would not be a reason to say that traffic area is slum and blight. Or if you go to Griffin and Red Raider Road, right there by the school. People run that stop sign all the time. No, that's not solely a reason. Now, some of these constitute better reasons than others if you use them singularly, so you're better off to use all of them. But those 6 issues make up the definition of slum and blight. So once let me back up. So once you've identified that your community has slum and blight, and you have purposes, the next 2 things you have to do is you have to create a plan, and you have to create an area where you're going to use the increment. And we'll talk about specifically what the increment is here in a minute. So for us, I zoomed right past it. So for us in Leesburg, I used us. So the little candy cane dotted red and white line, that crazy line is the city limits boundaries. So we go literally from South Leesburg. We go, oh, you got the microphone up so I can meander. You got South Leesburg right down here. All this is the villages, if you will. 27, you got east of town, the airport, so everybody recognizes the map. The yellow circles indicate roughly where our targeted areas are. So we have defined 3 specific areas that are our CRA, our redevelopment areas. The Carver Heights area, the downtown area, and the 44127 CRA area. Those are our defined areas. So whenever a municipal corporation or a political subdivision creates a CRA, they have to specifically define the area, and the occurrences in that area has to meet that definition. Once you create the area, now you're eligible to create an increment. It's called a tax increment, a tax financing increment, a TIF. What is that? The increment is the amount of tax revenue collected in the identified blighted district that is above what was collected in the base year. The base year is defined as when you created that CRA. So as the area grows, the revenue above that becomes the increment. I got a picture that says it better, right? Because the picture speaks to 1,000 words. So the increment that the cities or municipal corporations only receive is in that targeted area, in that box, above the base year line. The CRA is funded by the increment of both the municipal corporation's tax value and the county's tax value.
That's why the county doesn't like it.
That's why the county doesn't like it. Because so here is what a tax increment looks like in a picture. You have this, whatever area you've defined that is going to be your TIF or your district. Right now, it creates a certain amount of revenue. Might not be a lot because it's facing all those issues that we talked about. So typically, I even shouldn't say typically, always, it should be creating little to no revenue. It's underperforming. It's meeting the definitions of blight. Therefore, it's not creating enough tax revenue to solve the issues that the people want to solve. So we set out, we create a CRA. When we make that box, we count up all the taxable property in that box. And we know, based on our current millage rate and based on that millage or that taxable value in that year, it creates a certain amount of revenue, year one, base year. Let's say that that box creates $1,000. That's the base year. Year One, let's say there's a little bit of growth, and now instead of $1,000, it's 1,000, which is the blue, and $50. So here's what happens. The base year tax money, which represents in the blue, constantly and forever goes to the general fund. Okay, so the city has several what we call operating funds. We in Leesburg have typically more than normal because of all the utilities that we run. So every utility has a fund: electric, water, sewer, gas, airport. Those are all funds. So governmental accounting is very segregated. We put all our colored marbles in segregated boxes, and those segregated boxes are called funds. The general fund, the word general, think of it just like that. General fund means everything. It's general, wide-ranging. The general fund provides multiple services. The electric fund provides one service. Right? You with me? The electric fund does one thing: turns your lights on. The water fund does one thing: it gets you water. The sewer fund does one thing: it takes care of your waste. Get right? The general fund does a host of things. So it's general. It does planning and zoning. It pays the city manager. It pays the city attorney. It pays the accountants. It provides provisions of streets. It provides parks. It provides police. It provides fire. It provides parks and recreation. It provides for the city clerk, who takes records and holds elections. So the general fund is everything. So now back to the base year. The base year is the amount of tax money that was created before the TIF was started. That money that went into the general fund stays in the general fund. It never leaves it. So blue goes to the general fund. The TIF is the increment above the base year. That tax money is then cut away and put into what we call a special revenue fund, which you have a copy of. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And that creates the money that can be spent and earmarked for that box or that district. This money is then matched by the equivalent money from the county, and that becomes the budget for the CRA. So as we grow, what we can see is, I used a big example. So in this example, by year 5, the green is $1,000, the blue is $1,000, and so as much money as the increment was the base. So the argument for, if you're a county person, that you say is, well, you're creating more activity for county services, therefore we don't want to give it to you. That's the argument. The municipal corporation's argument is, look, we're fixing your problems. These are municipal service issues. It's not an impact on the county budget, therefore you got to give the money to us. So the law agrees in that case. Doesn't make it less contentious, but but there's always that. So that's the core issue with the controversy surrounding CRAs. But then if you're in the municipal corporation side, you're doubling down on money, right?
The city benefits better than the county.
The city typically gets double. And so we'll show you that in a second. So the big words really is, that's the increment, and we're fighting blight in a specific district. So once you've got your area picked out, you've targeted and you know what you've created your base year, then you got to put together a board. The statutes are pretty open, but the point I want to drive home on this is this board is autonomous. This board manages the CRA monies. So y'all writing the checks on the CRA. Y'all have influence on what the projects are. Now, mind you, that there's a split in this makeup, okay? Each of our so the CRA has 3 districts, 3 boxes, 3 autonomous boards. We have the Greater Leesburg-CRA, AKA the Downtown CRA. That's you guys. Yeah. We have the Carver Heights CRA, That's you guys. And we have the US 27441 CRA.
Do CRAs ever finally get to accomplish what they're doing and go away?
Answer is yes. Statute says there's a 40-year limitation. You can renew, and your renewal process varies on whether you're a charter or a home rule county.
John, to the best of your ability, use the mic.
We're
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're a home rule county, so by statute, it's typically easier to extend and create than it is in a charter county. Okay, so
How old is ours?
I'll get to that. Well, let's hit that right now. I think that's time by time, roughly. So first CRA is the Greater Leesburg-CRA. It was created in 1997. It's the blue area. And roughly it's Dixie to 441, kind of as Dixie bends up, right? Whatever, you know, and then kind of to about 9th Street-ish. And then it's got, you know, it's got a little tick on it, okay? That's the downtown CRA. The downtown CRA body, when the commission put this together, is a body of 7 members. Each of the 5 sitting city commissioners plus 2 appointed members. So now let me back up. When I said you guys are in control of the CRA, I wasn't lying, but you're one of 7 votes. So each of you have 1 vote, but there's 7. So the other 5 that aren't here tonight because they've been through this rodeo before is the city commission. So the city commission in their commission capacity appointed the board, but they also serve on the board. And when this was created back in the day, that was permittable, and it is pretty common. What's special about the downtown CRA for the city of Leesburg is the city was forced into creating it pursuant to the 1997 settlement agreement between the city of Leesburg, Lake Regional Medical Facility, and NAACP. So you hear that referred to commonly as the lawsuit, the decree, and the settlement. So the decree said the city was required to create the CRA, and it was required to have representation of minorities in it. And basically, when the commission created the CRA, it was 2 members, and then they divided it a west side and an east side. So 1 member has to live or have business in the east side, so everything Canal Street to the east is 1 district, and everything to the west is the other representative. And I think the way we have it is, John, you're west, and Samantha, you're east. That's the downtown CRA. I'm going to get to another specialty that's unique to Leesburg, is that the decree also mandates where you spend the money. So let's hold off on that one until we get to the budget talks. The next CRA we have is the Carver Heights Montclair CRA. It was created, I don't remember when, I think it was 04.
2004.
Ish. We put together a master plan. We've redone it twice. I think I gave you the original. No, I think I gave you the 2 redos in your packets, which is 15 and 2012 or something, unless I'm mixing my dates up.
I think it's 2015.
But it was created kind of out of the same type of feelings that the downtown CRA was. But it didn't have the requirement of the spending requirement. So this one functions more as more of a traditional CRA. It's a little bit of a slower growing area. I didn't give you a lot of history on growth, but really up until maybe the past 2 or 3 years was there really a decent increment that was created by this CRA. It has 2 appointees. Obviously, Robert and Teresa, you're those appointees, and I think the hiccup in that one is you have to live in the Carver Heights CRA to be appointed. The 2 members, again, serve with the other city commissioners. So even though you guys write the checks and have influence, you got to work with the other 5 members of the gang, as I affectionately call the city commission, the gang of 5. So you guys are the gang of 7.
Okay.
And so instead of counting to 3, we got to count to 4. Right? The majority rules. So that's the Carver Heights Montclair CRA. The other CRA is different than the last one It was created at a unique time, 2010. It was really created on transportation issues and the feeling that our major corridors were blighted. And it goes down 441, and it goes down 27. And its purpose was to make those corridors and the appearance of Leesburg look better. It's special. I'll talk about those. Actually, I'll jump to that next. When it was created, the board, the city commission said, just the city commission is going to serve on this. So actually, when the city commission has to make issues about the 441-27 CRA, it's a separate meeting. It's the same 5 commissioners, but actually they're acting in capacity as CRA commissioners, not city commissioners. And I think at this time, if I'm correct, one more thing, and then I'll stop for questions. Being on the CRA board, being appointed by the city commission means 3 things. It means that you're open to the Sunshine Law. That means anything you do and say will get you arrested. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Everything you do for the CRA is a public record. Please don't be frightened by that. Hence my initial comment. That doesn't mean that you guys, Samantha, if you're walking down the street and you see John, that doesn't mean you cannot any longer talk to him. But it does mean when you go buy a beer from John, that you better not be talking about downtown CRA business with John at the bar, who's a friend of mine, no, I'm kidding, right? And talk CRA business. You can talk city business, right? You could talk about a street project, an airport project. You can talk about how horrible electric rates are, or whatever. But you can't talk about CRA business. So that's significant, because if you end up talking about electric rates and somehow it gets weaved back into an action that the CRA is doing, you should refrain from those conversations. So in essence, any business that you do has to be in the sunshine. How are you here today? The exception is, this is a noticed public meeting. I know we don't have anybody here in the audience, but we're filming. This will be broadcast. We're taking minutes. Anybody could come into this meeting. Commissioner Berry's the only city commissioner here, but they could have come if they wanted to. So the exclusion is whenever you have a meeting and you conduct business, it's duly advertised and notified, and you are publicly acting as we speak.
So even out of school, 2 CRA members can't discuss what's going on. Is that what that means?
You cannot have a discussion with your appointee or a city commissioner, because you're all members.
Okay.
You're all would be members of the downtown CRA. So you can't talk to, I'm not going to say Commissioner Berry because she's sitting right there, but so let's run into Alan
right.
Reisman. You can't talk to Alan Reisman about, hey, we need to do this project in the downtown CRA when he comes to your shop and buys a beer. Okay. Because you're,
I understand.
But you can tell Alan that pothole on Main Street needs fixed. And even though Main Street's in the CRA, you could say that because that's not a CRA function. That would be a general fund. It's a city function. Or you can yell at Mike Peterson that says we need more cops, you're more firemen, or but you can't say we need to do the Magnolia Street project.
Right.
Anything that's going to come before the downtown CRA, that's off limits now with any of the 5 members or Samantha. And Teresa, Robert, same goes for you guys. If you guys are downtown at John's Bar, you can't talk about any Carver Heights issues. So anything that and that's referred to as the sunshine. And anything you do is open records. If you take notes during this meeting, that's actually a public record. If you, if you call Commissioner Berry to talk about this, A, you shouldn't do that. But B, that's a phone record. If you call me, which you can do, that's a public record. So somebody could say, which is the if you text me, you write me, email me, those are all public records. If you're emailing, a couple of things here to remember. If you get an email from me and I mail it to you, couple of rules of thumb. Don't respond or respond individually back to me. If you because sometimes I'll send you emails and say, hey, what do you think? Hey, the CRA body is going to talk about this. In that case, respond singularly or don't respond at all or pick up the phone and call me. If you respond all and say, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, and you reply all, that's a sunshine violation. Because now all the group is privy to your private conversation. So that's got to be in the sunshine. All that is open records, which is the next point. The third point is ethics and conflict of interest. Yep.
So, as members of my community become aware that I'm a member, and maybe they come up to me and talk to me about something in my community, how does that work?
You can absolutely talk to them as much as you want. John Doe, Jane Doe, whoever comes up and talks to you privately, individually, whatever, they're a citizen at large, have at it.
Okay. Now
The
they
five
may,
people that you can't talk to outside of this room in a public meeting is Teresa and the 5 city commissioners. Only as it pertains to the Carter Heights CRA.
all right.
It's not as ominous as it sounds. Just be careful. That's it. Common sense. The third thing is ethics, conflict of interest. On ethics, you'll be required to fill out a financial disclosure form. That comes every June 1st. You fill it out. It's super easy. If you need help filling that out, just give my office a call, give me a call, and write this down in case you, and I didn't put it up there. My email address, if you don't have it, you ready? It's Al, A-L, ready? Al, A-L, dot, Minner, M-I-N-N-E-R. You gotta have both ends, otherwise we'll find you. At Leesburg, Florida, and you gotta spell out Florida, .gov. That will find me. Offline, I'll give you my phone number. Questions, comments, use that email. Put it in your data bank. Don't hesitate to call me, email me, ask questions. I might defer you to somebody else.
They also have to do that 4 hours ethics class.
All right, so, and we'll get you lined out on that too. There's a 4 hours ethics class where you got to go through and you watch a FL, Florida League of Cities kind of video. We'll get you all straight on that. It's a piece of cake. It's not hard. It's easy. And so those are kind of the 3 things. Just make sure you stay current with the forms. We'll help you with that. Everything you do that's related to one of the CRAs as a public record, and watch out, don't talk to the gang members while you're in an individual capacity. That in 35 minutes is what a CRA does, how it's created, and brings you up to speed to fiscal year 24, and then we can talk about budgets. Any questions on that? Too fast, not enough detail, good enough for now. There'll be more as we get closer. But those are really the basic things you need to know.
I have a question. You mentioned about the meetings. You said you recommend 1 CRA meeting per month, or as information comes up.
Yeah, it's typically as needed.
Okay.
Typically, the CRAs don't meet a whole lot. We meet typically around budget time. We'll have kind of a workshop session with you, June, May timeframe to build some consensus, and we'll bring you some budget information. You guys meet, and then we roll it into the budget, and then so May, June, July is really when you guys typically meet more often.
So is there an opportunity to present potential projects that might be needed in the community, or we just vote on something that somebody else has decided it's going to be needed in the community?
In the past, John, we haven't tackled that really. We've kind of been a little more ad hoc than having a lot of meetings with the CRA boards.
Okay.
Can't explain that. I suspicion that may be changing, which is fine. If you guys want to meet more regularly, let me know. If you guys have ideas, send me emails. If you guys want to meet more regularly, yell at me. I digress from your answer, but it's almost March.
Yeah.
Internally, we are now in the budget process. Brandy McDaniels is our budget director. I'm sure you guys have met her, seen her in action. She's a rock star. She does an awesome job. She right now gets like a 30-day break from the budget. So typically in December when you see Brandy, she's like cool and chill and relaxed. But pretty much after the holidays, January 1 comes around, Brandy's right back at it, setting up the budget. So as we speak, the budget requests are out to department heads. They're in initial discussion timeframes. It hits my desk mid-April, and so I'm kind of knee-deep in budget stuff from April to June. Then when July hits, all that work that we've been doing for the last 6 months gets put before the commission. And so typically in the June-May timeframe, we start hitting up the boards, you guys, on this is what we're at, this is what we think.
Is the downtown business plan that was done before COVID ever going to be revisited?
The May 18 downtown,
Yeah, the one that was just before COVID and kind of came to a screeching halt.
the answer's yes and no. No, I don't think it's going to be revisited because it's still pretty fresh. Yes, I think it's already being used because some of the ideas and concepts are already pretty much talked about. And even some of the things you bring up are talked about a lot.
Okay.
So I think you'll find too that I think that the tricky thing is that because the commission makes up 5 members of the CRA, these things are talked about a lot.
Okay.
So it's almost like if you've got 4 members of the city commission who want to do something, it's going to get done.
You don't need us.
Because there's 4 votes. But that doesn't mean we don't need you. That's just, so I think, with you all, we'll probably meet earlier. Maybe we have an April or May meeting. You get some concepts out. The rest of this meeting is going to kind of bring you up to speed where we're at in each CRA.
Would you go over the process of how they would request a meeting if they would like to do a
Email me.
CRA meeting? Okay.
Email or call me. I want a meeting to discuss. Whatever. Don't hesitate.
Now, do the CRA and the CDC crossover at any time? How does that simply work?
The answer is there's interface, but there's no crossover. The CDC, Community Development Corporation, there's obviously 2. There's the Leesburg CDC and West Leesburg CDC. By design or circumstance, kind of the Leesburg CDC kind of watches the downtown CRA more. You'll find out in 30 seconds, well, a little bit more than that. Why? Kind of the West Leesburg CDC has a little more influence with the Montclair Carver Heights CRA. But no, they're 2 different organizations.
Right.
Those organizations are more of citizen input into the CRA. Let me jump now to the CRAs, and I'm going to go in reverse order from the presentation. I'm going to go from the 27 441 CRA. The budget is before you. That was approved, and these are numbers from the fiscal year 24 budget. And I broke these up just kind of 2 so you could. It's called something a little bit different. If you go to, if you go to this, you'll see the front page, which is 246. That's the bottom line. You've got the total revenue sources, 2.3 million, and total appropriations, 2.3 million, right? They're balanced. We're a government organization, right? So that's kind of the summary. The next page, 247, that's what we call the detail of revenues. It's not very detailed because there's not really too many sources of revenues. Here, we call it taxes, current property taxes. Far right-hand column, 862,909. That's that money, according to the city's millage rate, 3.47921 or something like that. That's our millage rate. The millage rate is the rate which we tax property. It's always in thousands. So we give you a number, so we're going to use a round number, say 3. So every $1,000 of value, you have to give the city $3. So if your property's worth $1,000, it's taxable at $1,000, and our millage rate is 3, your tax bill is $3. So with our millage rate of 3.497 in the defined box of the 44127 CRA, we generate about $900,000. On this chart, I used a different name just to make it easy. The budget's formal. Those are the appropriate, correct names that Brandy uses. Then you're going to hear me, and I'm going to try to make it easier. So you got the Leesburg contribution, $862,000, and you got the county contribution, $1.442 million.
Why is yours higher?
Their millage rate is higher.
Oh, okay.
So it's the same assessed value with 2 different millage rates, but it's all the incremental value. So it's the incremental value at 3.4 and the increment value, I think the county's is 5.2. But they've got 3 different mills. So I think their general fund is that 5.2 number. So that's why the number's different. Miscellaneous, the details in there, it can be interest revenues, and obviously it's not very much. This 44127 CRA is an interesting cat, and here's the story about it. It was created in 2009-2010 timeframe, right as the economy was starting to collapse. It was created at a time from 2000 to 06, 07, where Florida was jamming, and we saw double-digit assessed values every year for a number of years. So remember, and then everybody quit paying their mortgages, the world collapsed, and we hit that recession. That's the time frame when we created 44127. So right before we went to bed that night, we inked a deal for $15 million bond note. We had this great projection of how we were going to pay for $15 million out of the incremental revenue for 30 years. We signed it, we got the money, we started spending it, the world crashed. And immediately, the downtown CRA was upside down. So we just borrowed $15 million, the world crashed, we had $1 million liability every year, and when you can't pay your CRA debt, the general fund has to. So I got hired shortly thereafter, and that was like one of the biggest issues. One of the big issues that we dealt with was how do we right this ship? And so we did a bunch of different creative stuff, but it really boils down to 2 things. We were creative and we changed the base year. So the base year in that CRA was, I don't remember what the number was, but it was 2010. By 2013, 2014, the value of the TIF was actually lower than the base year. So you would never create incremental revenue until the TIF rose above the base year. So we reset the base year to the lower value, which we were able to do for a bunch of different reasons. Most of all, probably just lucky. And then the TIF started growing again. That's the first thing we did. We reset the base year. The second thing we did was we pooled all the money. We've spent a little bit of money on an annual basis out of the downtown CRA, but we've basically stashed the cash so that we can pay the bond. We are just now 10 years into this. I think we reset the base value 7, 8 years ago. The downtown, the 44127 CRA is just getting to the point to where we might be able to start spending some money on things other than the bond. So what the bond paid for, all those lights down 441 that you see, the big tall poles, we spent about $7.5 million putting those lights in. We didn't spend the rest, what we call the proceeds, so you bring your credit card, you get your chunk of cash, about $15 million. We spent 7 of it. We kept $7 million of it. We started paying the note with the proceeds. And then we started shifting some stuff around. But when we reset the base year and then growth started happening again, actually the 441.27, as you see from the number, its liability is this pretty much every year. And you see about what we're generating. This note retires, I think it's got about 10, 12 more years left on it. About 7 or 9 million of the 15 is still outstanding, but that's actually starting to get in the spot where it's good. But that's not your all CRA. But I wanted to talk about it just because it's there. The budget's in there that I gave it to you guys. So let's jump back and let's talk about the Montclair CRA first or second. Okay, it has about $750,000 of revenue, and that's going up these days around 10%. So when we come back and we start talking about fiscal year 25, you'll see that 756 number. Hopefully that's up at least double digits because we're starting to see nice growth. We haven't seen nice growth in the Carver Heights CRA probably until, like I said, about the last 3 years. So the city kicks in about 300, the county kicks in about 470. There's some miscellaneous revenues which really aren't significant, and we've got about $750,000 budget. The Carver Heights CRA for several years has really been broken down to a few components. Number one is personnel and agency operations. Agency operations include insurances that we do, wraparound insurances, contributions to the West Leesburg CDC, all sorts of different stuff, all falls in that number. The detail is in your budget. The next thing that we do is we pay debt. When we built the resource center, we actually borrowed, I think, about $1 million or $1.2 million from the electric fund, and the CRA has to pay the electric fund back. That debt payment is about $100,000 a year. I will say that this number and that number and some of that number, those are fixed costs. There's no arguments. Like, we got to pay that. We got to pay the credit card bill. And there's a couple of personnel that do some housing issues that run the resource center. I believe that's Diane's salary, if I'm correct. So those are like non-negotiable. We got to pay those. The resource center operations, paying the light bill, doing different maintenance stuff. That's the $60,000 cost to run that. And then kind of discretionary, non-discretionary. So one of the biggest things that we changed this fiscal year, which was really Commissioner Barry's influence on the projects, was to increase the home grant. Right? So we created a new program. We didn't create a new program, but we enhanced the existing home grant program. And we increased the grant awards from $5,000 to $25,000. Then we're marrying it with some other agencies. We will try to stretch this money out as far as possible. We are now in the process of trying to get those funds out and spent. We're going to try to be as resourceful as we can, not to spend all of this, but to stretch it out, but still get maximum impact, and the boys and girls tuition. I put this in parentheses, 300, because we only really allocated 229, but we had some leftover monies from the home grant that we married with this to make 300. So the magic number is 300. And then the Boys and Girls Club concept is that was to help fund kids who live in the district go to the Boys Club tuition. This program, we're still in negotiation with the Boys and Girls Club with, trying to get this rolling. I'm hopeful maybe the next 90 days that's rolling. But as predicted, that one, some bureaucracy there, but we'll work through it. Then we had some leftover money. Typically, the rule of thumb is you want to spend everything you got, but we had about $67,000 left over that we'll have that available for funding next year. So, and just like everything, revenues equal expenses. That really is a Carver Heights CRA budget. So as we get into next year, there'll potentially be the 70,000 plus that plus growth. So don't hold me to this, but you'll have about another 750 maybe to $1 million, depending on where growth is, depending on where we set the millage rate. and that will be your plans for next year. It may be do the same, it may be change course, it may be a little of both, and those would be the discussions that we have.
I have a question. So, and then the other side of this, so let's say you're doing all this redevelopment. Isn't that raising people's real estate taxes too, and making it a little bit harder for them to pay those taxes? I mean, if you're already struggling to pay your real estate taxes, and we go in and do all this wonderful stuff, which is great for the community.
John, the
doesn't
way
it?
I understand your question is taxes never go up. Taxes never go up because every year we work around rollback.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So that affects millage rate. So, and remember, everything that we're talking in here is TIF.
Right. Okay.
So it's the incremental. It's the new stuff above base. Now, I mean, that my response to you is very broad.
Okay.
Right? Because every year, your home values, your business value goes up. Your home values are more protected than business values.
Right.
If you're homesteaded, your assessed value should not go up more than 3%.
Okay.
And the municipal corporation's millage rate will come down so that you don't pay more than
So
3%.
compensates.
So if your home is worth $100 in 1 year, it can only be worth 103 in the next year, even if you can sell it for 175.
Okay.
So the market, the assessed values don't true up on residential property until there's a
So
sale,
then it's actually really a good thing.
if it's homesteaded.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the focus should be on businesses to try to make a difference for,
I'm going to say no. The focus needs to be done on anything that improves property values.
okay, well,
And actually, in this case, our focus is on residential.
right. Okay, but if
And
we were
in-
to focus on business, that would be a plus as well for the CRA.
I just think it depends on what CRA you're in.
Okay,
Okay, if you're in the 44127 CRA, where that's, those are commercial corridors. If you're in the Carver Heights CRA, I'm gonna probably roughhouse say that probably 90% of the assessed values are residential based.
okay.
I mean, there is some commercial in the Carver Heights CRA, like up Thomas Boulevard.
And Griffin
Probably
Road?
where, maybe there's a few businesses up top. I'm not gonna guess.
Griffin and Thomas, let's say that one.
Probably where
Yeah,
you find the high value numbers. And then the downtown CRA is a little bit of mix, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we're at this year, and then so we'll have those discussions for next year. If we jump over to the greater Leesburg CRA, the total revenue that we bring in there is about $1 million. About 350 is brought in from the city. About a little over $500,000 is the county. We have an other this year because we pulled some money out of reserves. And then for fiscal year '24, there was a bit of a change to the downtown CRA. But let's talk about the big discretionary, non-discretionary money. The number one non-discretionary item that you have to pay, no questions asked, you got to do it, half of the increment. So this is the increment, $1 million. Half of the increment is required by the settlement between Leesburg CDC, or the NAACP, the city, and the hospital. Half of that increment has to go to the CDC. So the Leesburg CDC was created because the decree said that. The decree said you're going to create a Leesburg Community Development Corporation, you're going to create a downtown CRA, and half of the increment has to go to the CDC while the CRA is alive. No question. That's in the settlement. So if you all decide, we don't want to pay the CDC anymore, you're in violation.
That's all the redevelopment by the pool and everything now, right?
No, the CDC gets this amount of money, and the settlement doesn't say where they have to spend it. The settlement doesn't say that the CDC has to spend it in the district. The settlement says they get it, and they have to spend it to eradicate blight. Most of the CDC does stuff I think probably has been in the district, different apartments throughout the area, and that type of thing. But no, the pool, Pine Street has nothing to do, for the most part, with the downtown CRA. So that's expense number one. You've got to pay the CDC. The next thing that we did this year that was different is we created the special events division. The special events division, when the partnership folded, the community said, we got to continue these events. There was the philosophy that the partnership between the Leesburg Partnership and the city of Leesburg that did Bike Fest, those funds were generated, they made money, the partnership controlled them. The city said, we're going to help you do Bike Fest, we're going to help you generate money, but you have to do some events and you have to give some of this money back to the city in the form of different events and programs, which the partnership did until the time that Bike Fest didn't become as profitable. That's in a conversation for a different day. But the fact of the matter is, Bike Fest lost profitability, but when the partnership told the city they really didn't think they could do this long term anymore, maybe there's a couple of 3 years left, and so 3 years would have been fiscal year 24, 25, 26. By the time we started getting to fiscal year 27, barring a major windfall, the partnership pretty much said, we're out. The community said, reaction to that was, you got to continue to do events. So the city commission with the CRA board said, all right, we're going to create a special events division. And the special events division is going to get an allocation of $500,000. Personnel, and then events. So stuff that go to events. As a side note, that $450,000 is different than the Bike Fest money. This $450,000 is fireworks, Martin Luther King Parade, Holiday Parade, the Blues and Brews, and different events that we'll have throughout the year. Bike Fest is another different animal. On that one, we reached in. Now so if we're talking about Bike Fest right now, we're in the general fund, not the CRA. I don't think Bike Fest will ever become part of the CRA, but what I will say is based on how April goes, we will definitely budget different for Bike Fest. My guess is it's going to have its own division in the general fund. So, and hopefully if Bike Fest is successful, there's going to be, well, I can't say that either, because there's limitations on that success. That profits from Bike Fest, because there's alcohol sales involved, cannot be a funding mechanism for the city. Okay. And then that's a statutory thing. A municipal corporation can't use alcohol sales to run the city. That's obvious. If we did, John, you could, right? Because we would sell beer to fund the police. And the law says you can't do that.
Can you reinvest it back into Bike Fest, though?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking that you can reinvest it back into not-for-profits. So that's where I think probably we're Bike, and then we'll put that in the budget and we'll have it all in the budget. So. The other thing, though, is we can't use profitable Bike Fest monies to fund events, because that's a general function of the city. So where this money goes in the future, I don't know. If everybody wants to continue, this money being the events division, if we continue to want to have events, I'm going to see probably for the near future that the events are going to need to be funded out of the CRA until the general fund grows enough that we can shift that expense out and stick it in. But it's an eligible expense because running events in the district brings commerce, as economic development, and brings people and business and helps raise tax values. Therefore, it's a doable expense. So the Greater Leesburg CRA right off the bat, bam, special events, bam, CDC. And what does that leave? About 100 grand. So right now, this is your discretionary money, all right? So you know, that's hence another reason why we don't meet a lot in these things, because I think for the most part the community's accepted where the commission has gone, and the discretionary money is getting pretty low. That doesn't mean what you're going to do is not important, but that means we're spending the money in the right spots. What I think in the future is where I see the city commission and with your all's input, where I see the downtown is probably now getting back to interior downtown stuff. Back to your question, John, about are we following the downtown master plan that we did in 17? My answer is yes. And I think probably in the next month or two, you're going to start seeing new ideas rolling out of my office to your body, as well as the city commission, on things that we will do with the downtown CRA in the future, aside from pay the CDC and do special events. And I think the priorities that the city commission and you guys will probably talk about is parking, potentially revisiting the Market Street concept, and other kind of beautification things back in core downtown.
Where does the sign and facade grant come from? Comes out of there?
Yeah. It's buried in this.
Okay. Yeah.
And you see this number's low because we still have some, a little bit. And the commission started to shift away from that a little bit because they put more of an emphasis on the events.
Okay.
So, and again, in each of these increments, you know, roughly, the big growers, actually the 44127 CRA, I think that was 30% growth last year. Carver Heights, I want to say, was 15, and downtown was maybe 12. So those would be the same numbers. That was my presentation for you this evening.
Awesome.
Is the signage going to remain? I know, like you said, we shifted from, but should we focus back on that, or that's not a main drive right now?
My knee-jerk reaction to you is probably, I see you guys shifting away from that a little
The
bit.
problem with that grant,
And it depends which CRA we're talking.
Okay.
the problem with that grant, at least in downtown, is it was only a small match, so most businesses couldn't get the rest of the money to do it. I mean, it was nice that it was available, but I think last time it was less like 25% maybe.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough to motivate you to do it because we just didn't have the other 3/4.
I think it's a lot like the home grant. You know, we were cutting out $5 grand, but you couldn't do anything to your house.
But you guys
for $5
changed
grand,
that.
but we changed that to 25. The sign grant wasn't dissimilar to that. I think our max was 10, but 8%, so we would give you 8. But a nice sign that's conducive to the sign code is probably more like 25 grand. So businesses are still looking, yeah, thanks for giving me 8, but I still got to dig out 20 out of my pocket.
But how many would you say that took advantage of? I mean, that
I've given you guys
participated.
that report before.
That's what I'm saying.
I think we've had 40 or 50.
I've taken advantage. We built the
You
fire
did your-
and police
seen it.
memorial. We did with that, and we did the deck at the warehouse was part of
can
that
give
grant.
you, I've done
I think I
So
remember. I was just
dig
wondering
that
if it
out.
was
And
any
maybe 40,
additional.
50 is too high, maybe it's more like 30 or 40.
I was just wondering if any additional since
No.
that time. Okay.
I would kind of see, I think, moving forward into 25, probably maybe the biggest shift is going to be a reanalyzation of where we go with 27 and 441. The commission's been hesitant to spend that because the fear has been, don't want that debt coming into the general fund. But I think we'll probably have some monies available for that. Carver Heights CRA, I'm hoping that this home grant cycle is very successful. I think by the time we get into June and July, hopefully we'll see that money. That maybe we won't see the improvements, but we'll have that money allocated. We've got the priority projects picked out right now because we've kind of ranked them on worst condition money first, and we're trying to work with our partners to spread that out. So I'm seeing you guys do a repeat of that a little bit. And then downtown, I think that's where we'll start talking, because the downtown has been special in that at least since my time, we kind of went, we did the Main Street streetscape. And you see the debt. When we did that, we had to rub the pennies together to get the $1 million to build that, to have the debt money to pay a bank note, and it was a 10-year note. So that one's actually only, believe it or not, got a few years left. That will open up some money when that retires. Then when we got Pine Street done, or when we got Main done, we started shifting back to doing the facade sign landscape money. And then there wasn't a whole lot of money after that because we were cutting that check on the debt, so we really weren't working with a lot. But then we started seeing growth happen. Then we kind of shifted our attention to the bigger projects in the Pine Street. And we used different resources for that. Actually, that had a home in the downtown CRA, if I remember, for a little while, but then that grew, and then we figured out different ways to fund that. Then we started shifting to the Market Street concept, and that really started to get some legs. I think two things happened to that concept. COVID. And I don't think when we started unveiling the initial stuff of Market Street that, I think the designs just didn't hit. And then we were kind of still grappling with the pool and other finance, so we kind of shelved it, then COVID hit. So now as we're turning the corner, we've got the pool done, we've got Pine Street done, and I think you're going to start seeing new growth that's going to.
Where did the money come for doing the upper floors of the businesses downtown? What was that find? Those grants?
Okay, so there's 3 big redevelopment grants the city has done: the home grant, the facade sign landscape grant, and the downtown historic business grant, which I think is what you're asking.
Yes, right.
So the downtown historic business grant actually came from non-CRA monies.
Okay.
It came from electric money, came from water and sewer money, and it came from general fund money.
Okay.
And we created a $1 million pot. We hit equally on all of those because as folks started coming in and seeing these buildings, they started getting some legs that we could get these redeveloped. Developers started walking away from it because it was too expensive. There was a lot of problems that was wrapped up in some of the, I'll be super brief, with the utility concepts, and a lot of redevelopment money had to go into resurfacing utilities to bring it up to code. And Leesburg's not atypical to that. I mean, we've got electric, everything's safe, but there's water, there's sewer mains underneath buildings, there's stuff that's attached, a lot of prescriptive easements. Prescriptive easement means the city's electric wire has been there so long, therefore that is a right-of-way, even though it's not. It's kind of the law. So we've got a lot of that stuff going on. And but when you get the chance to fix it with a redevelopment project, but those costs were starting to make developers walk away. So the city said, okay, we'll help you.
Well, residential on top and retail on bottom is always a good way to go.
Well, and then that came from, and that was rooted in the downtown master plan, was wanting to create more concepts of mixed use, get more people downtown. So I see a lot of action going on. Lee School's coming up. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow.
Curious. I tried to read on it, and I could have to get a subscription to it, so I didn't
I'm not
read
going
it.
to petition it, but it is public. Getting those buildings knocked down is super important. And the code puts the historic board in charge of that, so they'll be meeting about that tomorrow. But the root of that concept is if we can get good housing located. I mean, good housing is important throughout the community. But it's also super important to the downtown CRA, because the more people we can get to downtown, the more people hopefully patronize the businesses in the downtown, and that creates that nucleus of creating commerce, rising tax values, and those types of things.
Can I ask one more question? I promise not to ask any more.
This is your all's meeting.
Well, my question is, so that lot, you were talking about you guys redid the facades coming into town along Canal and along, coming in Main Street, but there's still that lot that sits right on the right-hand side. It used to be a gas station.
Private.
And there's nothing.
And that's the old Exxon station, right? What the Exxon or Mobil or something?
No, it's Gov.
It's just, you've got this beautiful facade.
Part of development, and this is, the rule of thumb is the municipal corporation, the city, needs to invest in its public right-of-ways and easements. And if the municipal corporation invests in blight, then the private sector will invest in their properties. That philosophy works. Everybody notices when it doesn't work. So your question is, it didn't work there. My response is, you've seen the growth, and you'll see. I didn't give you the history, but you'll see the downtown CRA has grown.
Yeah.
That lot's still an eyesore, but that's not the city. The city can only fix that through code enforcement, through those type of actions, and so code enforcement is another critical element of redevelopment, but that's also housed over in the general fund, not the CRA. Now, code enforcement can be an expense. I mean,
Yeah.
you could hire right? But let's not get into that discussion, because I think, for the most part, I think the city's really spending the redevelopment, the TIF
I
dollars,
think it's
where they
great.
need to be spent.
I just want to say, just to say, how do you all go about, like that marketplace? Do you all reach out to the farmers? Because like in Tampa and other areas, it's like, they reach out to all the farmers, and that's how they get them into their, down like Hyde Park area. in
The
Tampa.
city, so there are different philosophies with redevelopment throughout the different districts. The city of Leesburg has not been an events coordinator until this fiscal year.
Okay.
So now, yes, maybe going forward, the market concepts are going to start to get revisited. They have a little bit. And we've worked in liaisons with groups like the Downtown Business
The LBA, in fact,
Association,
the
with
new
the
market
partnership,
starts Saturday.
with the chamber. So we've had those type of things. But really, until recently, the market started, the market lost some power. I think there's some concepts that are concerning with the market because it's got some stout competition, primarily being the villages, which then sucks away some of the really good vendors. So they would rather be in a bigger market, the villages, versus a smaller market. So those concepts are being talked about. I think as this district grows and we start getting more foot traffic, more people down here, events and those type of markets will be more of something that the downtown CRA works on. Right now, you see where the money's being spent, and so there has and events and that type of thing. So I guess maybe we revisit that, but it hasn't been a priority because really the money hasn't been there to fund events or to pop
I
a
understand
market.
that. My other question is, who do I speak to about, you're got the funding for the house, upgrading the housing with that grant? So,
if you need to speak to resources on staff and you want to vet your ideas or what have you, I'll give you just a couple names. Obviously, number one, me.
okay,
Carver Heights, Montclair CRA, Sandra Wilson.
okay,
Downtown CRA, Travis and Maggie.
Yep.
Probably those are your first kind of me, and then you want to go down a level, those would be the people I hit.
okay.
By the way, you can talk to anybody you want, but at the end of the day, it should,
Now I want to talk.
communicate
to the
back
person
to the
that
manager, flesh out these ideas in public, and,
Yeah.
pretty much everybody this is your all
Yeah, I just
first round
wanted
on
to
it.
know just what direction that we needed to go to if,
I'm easy to get to.
okay.
Typically, I'm friendly.
Okay. Well, I'm not, so,
Typically, I'm friendly, unless Andrews comes in and wants, $1 million for some software, or Andy wants, then I get,
Bugging you.
so, no, I'm kidding. Really,
So
use me as your resource. We'll flush stuff out. Based on what your question is, there could be a billion different other
Yeah,
ways to go to,
avenues,
but
yeah.
typically Carver Heights is Sandra and me. Downtown's going to be me, Travis Manning.
okay. That's all I needed.
Awesome.
That's all I needed to know.
That's all I have for you tonight. That's
Thank
really
you.
Okay, that's-
Leesburg CRA 101.
It's been very informative. It has, really.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Glad to have
So,
you.
Thank you.
question. So, Montclair, does that end where like Main Street, if you go south on what's the street out there?
468?
Yeah, 468.
So that's your map there. Anything in the green box is in the CRA. So if you guys want me to email you this presentation,
Yeah.
you got my email. Just be easy. Email me.
That'd be great.
Say, yo,
So
Minner,
that we
send
can
me your
look at it.
presentation. Send me a map of. By the way, this map, everything I did on here, you can find on the website.
Okay.
So if you want to see it, and then blow it up. So Montclair, right? Montclair's kind of in the middle-ish. But you blow that map up, you get the road boundaries, and everybody's pretty much native. So everybody pretty much knows where those are.
Can you flip to the one for ours? So
Yours actually is super easy of all the CRAs.
That's pretty good.
It basically
441,
9th
Dixie.
441.
Is that
As
just
high
that
as
little
to-
bit of area that goes
As
to
high as to
27?
Newell Hill
and
Road?
We lied a little bit. I actually think
Newell Hill Road.
this part of Venetian Gardens is in there too.
what projects have they done on the East Canal side?
Nothing. Nothing.
With CRA money, not a whole lot, but we're going to say the CDC gets half the increment, and we're going to say we just put the pool in Pine Street.
So the CDC.
So even though I'm going to answer it this way. I think the east side, east of Canal, has gotten a significant amount of attention from the city outside the CRA.
outside from the CDC.
Yeah, the pool was a $6 million investment. Pine Street was called $3.5 million investment. So the east of that, east of Canal's gotten, I think, in the past 10 years, considerable attention. But then again, too, the downtown CRA just has not had that much money, because the immediate impact is half of that increment goes to the CDC. So as we get into budgeting, I'll bring you some more historic charts, and so you can get a better feel for. My knee-jerk reaction is there hasn't been a lot of, what do we do? We've got so much money to spend type of feeling probably until, and we're still not there, but B, it's only been probably the last 3 to 5 years that those numbers are actually starting to grow. And so even when you hear other districts, now I digress, when you hear other communities and how successful their CRAs have been, Mon Park around Lakeland, Clematis in West Palm Beach, those CRAs were created a long time ago. And even those CRAs, which are like really models around the state, it took half the cycle before. Because remember, when you create blight, that circle is the definition of blight. So there's not any money there to begin with.
So
It takes time for this to accumulate.
So when they start tearing down the buildings where the old school was and building those, are there tax incentives that we're not going to see help the CRA at all, or?
No, that's a great question. Let's say right now, the Lee School site probably creates 0 tax dollars. That development gets put in there and say there's a $40 million investment. So that $40 million gets tacked onto the value of the CRA.
Okay.
And then that investment, so pretty much almost every dollar that would be at the Lee School.
So the city's not offering them anything to come in, no tax incentives or anything like that. They would. Okay.
And we really don't have that for a redevelopment purpose. You don't really have the tax incentives
Okay.
for redevelopment.
I don't know if it's fair to ask, but I sound like, a lot of this is based on residential, right? The funds. I'm still trying to get an understanding of this. Along Thomas Road, there used to be a lot more industry. And then also, the reason I was asking about where does Montclair end, when you think about, say, Main Street and 468, then there's that little corner over there, let's say right across from the Circle K, I think that's what that is, that convenience store. I didn't know if that was included, because to me, we need,
Are you talking like up the Red Road?
well, you know where South Street comes around and meets,
It meets Main.
right. There's a corner, there's like a warehouse or something over there in that corner.
He's talking at the new, I think you're talking about a
Yeah.
new area going on 44 towards.
Yeah, yeah.
Like by Citadel hoping over that?
Yes.
That's not in there.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, well, hopefully it still has relevance. I get the part about residential, but we need some industry. Like you're saying, like right along Thomas. I mean, I think, you know, you want to get more money, we need some jobs that actually pay. You know, I mean, Walmart, they're great, but I mean,
You were arguing the age-old economic development equation. And what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
well, I'm just saying along that area, I mean, to me, I look, when I ride through there, I see like businesses just depleting on Thomas Road. I mean, there's stuff
Look.
there and they just,
Here, this is my opinion of the state of Florida and healthy municipal corporations in the state of Florida. We are service economy driven. Rooftops drive commercial development in the state of Florida. And as we get rooftops, commercial follows. Industry is actually secondary to that in Florida. So, and that's different than in my career. When you go out into the Midwest, it's more industry driven. So there, what comes first? The people, the rooftops, the jobs, or the industry? And so you know what, I don't think Florida is a strong industry economic state. That doesn't mean we don't have it, but it means we're rooted in a service economy. So when we're bringing in rooftops, we're bringing in economic development. So I think what you see in Florida is you see the better your housing is, the more people that are building houses, the more people that are coming in, then you get the spin-off service economy. I think the Village is the prime example for that. Disney is a prime example of that. And we're right in the middle of both. So I do think our economic outlook in Leesburg is very good. I think and really, and I can give you a whole long story about this to back up my point. Because if you go back to World War II, right, 1940, 1945 timeframe, the population of the state of Florida is 2 million. Can you believe it? And the old colloquial, the further you go north, the more you get south in the state of Florida. And so those 2 million people lived up in the Panhandle, kind of down the ridge. After the war, people came in. And I think the state's really struggled to have its own economic identity. You know, after World War II, there's that first push. You know, so we've kind of gone from agrarian, you know, then, you know, we were going to try industry, but it didn't happen. Then space came along, and we were the space state, and then we kind of went back to industry. Then we tried to build airplanes. But it's always come back to the three big pillars of Florida economy: tourism, old money, and people moving into the state. And old money is agricultural. So agricultural, tourism, and people moving in. So the more people we can get, then all those other things happen. So if you ask me what comes first, it's people.
Do CRAs ever get expanded in the area they cover?
We have yes is the answer. Depending again in who is your political subdivision, whether you're home rule or charter rule, it gets expanded. Because we're home rule, it was a little bit easier to do. Charter counties, it gets difficult. And these days, expanding a CRA, I think, is difficult to do because the counties don't want to give up that increment. So when you form a CRA, you better get it right the first time. I don't think that's an issue for us.
Okay.
So,
All right.
anything else?
Thank you.
All right. I got, Commissioner, if you want to adjourn us, we're good to go.
Thank you all
so
so much for
we'll move forward. We'll
coming
keep in touch.
and
Any questions you
outreach.
have, let me know. And If you guys want to meet and talk about this stuff again, and we'll be again back together before you know, talking about fiscal year 25.
And thank you, Commissioner Berry, for being here.
No, thank you. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. Keep sharing your ideas, making notes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I felt like I should get the gavel when she said email.
Yeah, we go.
All right, see you guys later. Absolutely. See you guys later.
Sandy.
Thank you.
Good to see you.